gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Welcome to Cornhusker Corner with Blake.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
I'm Brooks.
Is mayonnaise an instrument?
And you better bet your bottom dollar that these two brothers know how to handle business.
Here's a hand up to Thunder, who gives it back to Mike Stokes. He's going to throw it. He's got a man out. Yeah! 40. It is. Eric Crouch. 15, 10.
All right. Welcome to Cornhusker Corner, where there's no place like this podcast. As always, we're your host, Blake, and my brother, Brooks. Let's just get going. Always remember, like and subscribe to the channel. You can follow us on X or Twitter at @chusker_corner or on Instagram, Cornhusker Corner. Did want to also highlight, if you just want to listen to an audio version of this podcast, that can be found anywhere podcasts are found, Apple, Spotify. If you just want to give it a listen on your commute, that's great too. But let's get into it. Game week. As the past couple have been. But yeah, we have another test coming into Lincoln. Louisiana Tech. High-level thoughts.
Yeah, I think really we really should start out with the big news of the week, which is that two very unfortunate injuries to our starting two running backs, Gabe Irvin Jr. and Ramir Johnson. I mean, just gutted for those guys. Totally just gutted for those guys. Yeah. They've put in so much work. I mean, us as fans, we see like 5% of the amount of work that's done to be on a football team and to be, the starting running back for Nebraska. So yeah, I'm very gutted for him, especially Ramir. I think Gabe's going to take his medical red shirt, and I do believe Gabe can come back from this. Ramir, on the other hand, I believe this was going to be his last year of football.
He still technically would have one more year left.
For real.
That's 6 years at this point. So it is really, I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a long time to be in the mix there.
It is.
You have to weigh the pros and cons of that. Like, is he an NFL player? Or is he just going to keep beating up his body?
Right.
No,
yeah. I mean, it's a decision he's going to have to make, and the coaching staff's going to have to make with him, and we'll see where that goes. But it just seems like a more likely scenario that this could be his last football that we've seen of him, which is so unfortunate. I mean, when I heard the news, I literally almost was shedding tears for it because, we've been talking about Ramir Johnson for so long. He's such a good guy. Yeah. He does all the right things, and he's just was such a team guy. Yeah, it's just hard to see that happen to those dudes. But that being said, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a next man up mentality, right? So now our starting running back is AG, Anthony Grant, and I think we've seen him sort of take a step to look like maybe the best running back in the room either way, which was sort of ironic how that played out that way. And then we got a redshirt freshman. Emmett Johnson in the backup role, and by all accounts of people who have coached him, he's a really really talented player. So we'll get to see what he looks like as well. So yeah, how do you think the running back situation looks like going forward, man?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to pose this hypothetical: lots of teams can't lose two co-starting running backs and be okay. If it was going to happen in one of our position groups, it would have been running back. That we would be still okay, not perfect because the room was stacked. The more talent you have, the better. You can get those guys fresh legs, especially going into Big Ten play. That's really where it's going to rear its head, I think. Right. But I am cautiously optimistic. I mean, Anthony Grant had a great year last year, almost 1,000-yard rusher. And he did not really take a step back as opposed to just a couple games here and there.
I mean, and it wasn't even like he was the centerpiece of our offense last year either, right? I mean, Trey and Casey were. So yeah, that's statistically significant when you talk about 900 plus yards. Absolutely.
No, and you have to look at it. The one thing that I will say is still a detriment on him, which it it can be a good thing. He bounces it a little too much. But he does have very good vision. So sometimes he does that when he thinks he sees something and it's not there. But sometimes he sees something, like on that touchdown run, he bounced it, got a touchdown. So it's a pros cons, but that's just part of being a running back in general. I would definitely like him to hit the hole a little bit harder because the other two definitely did that. But I would also like to see him just do his thing and not try to do too much. Just run the ball.
I agree with that. I mean, and in that last game, were you talking about his touchdown at the end of the game where he?
Yeah.
Okay, so technically that he didn't bounce it. He went through the exact hole that he was supposed to go through. It was a complete lead block. A matter of fact, that's one of the things that I think can unlock AG's strengths is the differences in our offense this year versus last year. We weren't seeing like those dudes get as much movement in those types of blocking schemes as we are this year. I mean, really, if you freeze frame it to the moment on that touchdown specifically, if you freeze frame it on the moment that AG gets the ball and takes his first step, doesn't look like there's a hole there. But then the H-back comes through, pulls through the hole, and AG shows some patience behind him, and then he bounces it when he really needs to. And that's something that I think that AG sort of got a bad rap last year because not only was our offensive line, I think, a step behind where they are already this year, I think that, I mean, our offense, Whipple did not orientate the offense for a real rushing attack.
Yeah.
So I don't know if all that jittery, jivey, not north and south sort of running that you're talking about with AG is indicative of how he actually is as a player as much as is indicative of what we looked like last year as a team.
Yeah.
Now we'll see. Well, he's the guy now, so we'll see.
Yeah.
But I am optimistic about AG. I think that he's proved time and time again that he can lower his shoulder and run somebody over, man.
Yeah.
And I really like that. And he's also shown the ability to make tight cuts in tight spaces.
Absolutely.
Now, is it always the right cut that he's making? No, it's not always the right cut, but every once in a while it is the right cut. And when that is, he looks a little bit like Amir Abdullah in there. Not quite, but
listen, he does have that game breaking speed too. He can beat guys to the corner and he can get touched some long runs. I mean, he's shown that. The thing that the interesting thing I will like to see. I mean, Rule said at the beginning of the season that why would you put like second and third string guys back for returns? You put your most electric guys back there and let them make plays. So who was back there with Ramir Johnson?
Great point.
Who was back there?
Great
it was
point.
Emmett Johnson.
Yeah.
So they know that he has that game breaking ability. So I'm interested to see how they ended up using him.
Yeah.
And to go from there, I do think that we are still in a decent position, especially with the running quarterbacks we got. And it's not now another loss at that position, then we're going to be in for a long year.
No doubt about it. I mean, that position group went from being possibly one of the deeper rooms on the team to now the least deep room on the team.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, one thing I think about is yesterday, the Bill Bush was on the radio for 2 hours in the morning, like he always is, and he had so many gems left and right. He talked about how the style of football that Matt Rule wants to play at Nebraska can actually be very advantageous with the new rules, because you're talking about a staff that only has to break down 50 offensive plays a game in some games, versus they used to have to break down 110 if you were at Oregon in their heyday. So there's that. But also he talked about, I mean, he's coached Emmett Johnson, and he tries to not give you specifics to what and when he actually knows things about players, but he'll give you little nuggets. And one of the little nuggets he gave is like, look, Emmett Johnson's a really talented player. I think that he's going to be able to show the fans how talented of a player he is. And he was just like, so he didn't say outright that this is going to be a good thing, but he did say something like, maybe some things, end up being positives after all. So I'm very
especially
intrigued
getting your
with
young
Emmett.
guys
Yeah.
experience and playing time.
Mm-hmm.
That is really important for the future. And Rule has always been a future-oriented coach. Playing for the now but thinking towards the future. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yep.
Especially this week. This week is going to be interesting to say the least. But let's
no doubt about it. Glad to talk about a different position other than quarterback, even though the reasoning for why we're talking about that is due to injury. But it just seems like every minute of the last 2 weeks it's been dedicated to that quarterback conversation. But
absolutely,
which we will touch on again tonight, I'm sure. But
yeah, speaking of.
Yes.
Let's just get right into our preview here.
Yes.
One of the first questions I wanted to pose to you, just a couple here, then we'll get into a little bit of the X's and O's, then our predictions. How will we use Sims?
Well, I think that, I mean, like, the question is like, how do you think they will use them in actual reality, or how would I use them? So
yeah,
I'll answer it both ways, I suppose. How do I think they're going to, how would I use them? Let me start with that. How would I use them? I would, at this point, we've seen our offense, like I said, actually operate. Finally, we have a sample size of how they operated because Heinrich Harburg was in the game. Now, was he a superstar rent-a-car 100%? Like, that's the guy? Arguable, but the other guy fumbled so many times, it's hard to give an actual objective comparison. And I think sort of maybe that's even where the coaches are with it. So
in one game, yeah.
Yeah.
You got a very good sample size the first game.
Sure. And to me, based on his career, the sample size is there. That's to me though. And it's not my job writing on it. So, but if it were me, Sims would be like what Heinrich was game one, you know. He would be that Janarian Bonner H-back sort of role where he's going to get the ball, flat route. He's going to get the ball in third down situations sometimes, stuff like that. But anyway, so that's how I would use him. How do I think they're going to use him? I think he's going to start this week, unfortunately, based on what all the coaches are going to say. And I hope, like, look, I'm rooting for him to do well. I am. I'm rooting for him to do well because if he can get it figured out, like all of a sudden we have a quarterback room where we have two prototypical quarterbacks that fit into what they're trying to do with this offense. And that's a good problem to have regardless. So if Sims can show a little bit of productivity, I mean, that's great. But I just think he's a quarterback. They will continue to use him as a quarterback unless he just like totally has continuance of what the problems have already been, and then they'll think about what I'm talking about. But
you touched on what my mindset. We have a good, people are like, oh, you don't have a good sample size. It was 2 away game. Those aren't his first 2 starting games as a starting quarterback in the Division I football. Okay, so you know what he does, and something I've been seeing on just I should stop reading, but the like Nebraska message boards and all this stuff. And I just like, guys, they're talking about like, well, he has a better arm and he throws the ball better than Harburg. And I'm like, where are you seeing this? Where are you seeing this? He throws it to the other team better. From what I've seen, he can't read a defense. He stares down the receiver that he's going to throw to. And he thinks that he can make a throw that he sometimes can't. He doesn't play the QB position smart from what I've seen. Now he is a freak talent, like physical specimen. So he needs to be on the field. He does. And I'm not opposed to having him be, especially letting Harburg be back there just in general. And, you know, having the passes, having the runs and things like that, but maybe having Sims be more of like the power runner when they are in there, kind of how they used to use Wildcat.
Yeah. I don't want him taking snaps anymore. I'm still there.
You don't.
I'm still there with it. Let me put it this way. I'd rather have Uncle Rico.
Dude.
I'd rather have Uncle Rico in the game to throw bombs for us than Jeff
over those
Sims.
mountains.
Over those mountains.
No, I completely understand that. And again, it's not our decision.
No.
So how I would like as a fan that knows a little bit about football and doesn't want the same things to happen over and over and over again, the past couple of years, sticking with some people that you probably shouldn't when they keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, not just in the quarterback position, all over the field. I don't want that either. But unfortunately, I think you're right. I think he's going to be the starter.
Yeah.
And I hope that he gets it figured out and he completely proves us all wrong, because you're right. If that happens, then we have two options to really help
Yeah.
this team thrive.
No, I'm rooting
And for the
him.
first time in a while, if that's the case, for the first time in a while, we will have a true two deep that if the starter goes down, the fans aren't holding their breath the entire time.
No doubt about it. No doubt
yeah.
about it. And it's interesting too, because it seems like in a lot of situations, an offense has two superstar quarterbacks, or a team has two superstar quarterbacks, but they're different styles. Like you might have one that's like, oh, he's a pocket guy, but he's like as good as Joe Burrow, so we're going to build our offense around him. But if this other guy comes in, he's Jalen Milroe, he's a runner, and now we have to sort of alter our offense a little bit. That's sort of been the case in a lot of places. I mean, look at Alabama right now. Not that their quarterbacks are superstars, but they're very different quarterbacks. And at Nebraska, it's sort of been that case in a lot of places too. I remember Taylor Martinez, whenever his backups would come in back in the day, it was like, okay, offense is different now. But but what I'm trying to say is that's one of the positives of this particular situation is their skill sets are largely similar. I mean, if Jeff Sims at full blast, full capacity, if you just take all of his highlights and say that's him, then I mean, his strengths are about what Heinrich Haarberg's strengths are. Intermediate passing game, short passing game. He has a strong arm, but it's just a matter of whether he hits the guy or not. And he's an incredible runner. So, like I said, it's just good to have two guys that are very prototypically similar in that role, because if either of them come out, you don't have to change a whole lot. And by all accounts, Chuba, if he had to come into the game at any point as well, I mean, he's a decent runner as well. So, yeah. So, I mean, that's what they say. That's what they say. And he doesn't look unathletic. I mean, he doesn't.
No,
look
and
unathletic.
even last year, his strength was tucking the ball and running.
Yeah.
It was not passing the ball.
No.
So, yeah.
I would say he's, based on what we've seen, I would say Chuba's the weakest runner in that room. Not that he's a weak runner, but I would say he's probably the weakest runner of those three, the top three quarterbacks in that room. Heinrich, to me, I mean, Jeff Sims is an elite athlete. So when he runs the ball, it's obvious that this dude's an elite athlete. He's got good vision. He falls forward. So even when he's getting tackled, he's getting 2 or 3 more yards out of it. But, man, I was just really impressed with Heinrich's efficiency of running. Really impressed.
He has a little bit more shiftiness to him.
Heinrich, you think? Yeah.
Heinrich. I think straight on, I think Jeff is probably the better runner and can outrun more people. But I think Haarberg has a little bit more shiftiness. Because if you look and notice the type of runs that Sims has, he really straight on. If it's a slide, if it's not. But it's really straight on. He's not making people miss. Haarberg made a couple guys miss last game. So,
well, he definitely ran over some dudes as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But going on from there, just my last hypothetical before we get in. Who has a breakout game? Because last week it was definitely Haarberg. The defense as a whole played really well, but individually, Haarberg had a breakout game. No one really knew what to expect.
Right. And I'd argue that Fedoni had a mini breakout game. It wasn't full on like, oh, he's here, but a couple of those plays were like, oh man, okay, you see the potential.
Statistically, you would look at that and say, he played okay, had a touchdown, but if you go back and look at the tape, you're right. Fedoni did have a couple really good catches. That one on the sideline.
What do they say? He definitely. What do they say? Flashed. That's what they say. He definitely flashed.
Yes.
But yeah. So who's gonna have a breakout game this game? I hope it's Jeff Sims. I think it will be Emmett Johnson, based on stuff that I've heard. I think that our offense, we're going to look at it and say, you know what, we're not going to do anything different. We're still going to rely on the run to open things up in the pass game. So if that's the case, you can't just run AG 35 times in the game. He's our only, veteran running back now. So you can't do that to him. He's going to be the bell cow, but Emmett's going to get carries. And to me, running back is a lot like some of these positions, or quarterback, like we were talking about the other day, is like you can really tell immediately, if they're going to be good or not. No, not that dudes don't develop, but like, come on. Some of these guys that we've had before were like Rex Burkhead. When he was a freshman, and Rex Burkhead would come into the game like 3 or 4 plays a game, maybe. But every time Dad and would look at us, and we'd look at Dad, we'd go, Burkhead alert.
Yeah.
And because every time he came into the game, it was like they give him the ball, even if the play is completely blown up, he's not going to get a negative play out of it. Like there's just something about Burkhead you could tell from the jump, and a lot of these guys are like that. Whereas you look at, I remember, and I'm not trying to disparage anybody, but I remember Terrell Newby. Terrell Newby was a guy who came in super highly touted. And not that he was a bad running back for us, but I never really saw what other people were seeing in Terrell Newby.
Trey Bryant.
Sure. That's another one. Yeah. Marcus Mendoza. That's one from back in the day. He looked fast, but like he just never, never was that guy that we thought he was going to be. But so Emmett Johnson, his first couple carries, I believe, are going to tell you a lot. I think they're going to tell you a lot. If he rises up, if he's there for the moment, we'll know immediately. And the good thing about running back is you get one carry, and you just got hit, and you went through the line, and you got hit hard. And in some cases, the nerves knock right out of you, and so that's not a position where you really have to be too worried about nerves after the first couple plays. Whereas some of these passing quarterbacks, Rule was talking about, that's why they wanted to throw Harburg in there in the option in the first play. Some of these pocket passing quarterbacks, you got to think about it. It's like, yeah, if they don't get touched for the first couple drives, like, it's a little different. You feel like you're in your own world, but anyway, yeah. So I'm looking for Emmett to have a breakout game, but I really hope it's Jeff Sims. I really hope it is, because it would be positive for our team to have Jeff Sims, like, being efficient.
Yeah, and I don't want this to come off like I'm rooting against Jeff Sims. But even if he has a good game to this next week, I know what he does in the pressure situations. We know what he does in the heat of the game when he has to make a play. That is where your quarterback is supposed to be the most poised and deliver. So it's not like I'm rooting against him to have a good game. That's just going to be weighing on the back of my mind, just to kind of respond to your who has a breakout game.
Yeah,
because we all know it when it comes down to it. Do we as a fan base, do we trust Jeff Sims from one good game? No, we don't.
No.
With Michigan coming in, no, we do not. So.
Yeah,
but who I think, yeah.
Yeah. Then you also have to, sorry, you continue thought, but then you also have to look at Heinrich Harburg has barely played at all. We literally have one game sample size from him, and it looked good, admittedly. But we also would be forging into the darkness with like a birthday cake candle with either one of them. It feels like maybe you'll light the room, but maybe you won't. So yeah,
fair,
sorry. Go ahead. Who's your breakout player?
Yeah, just from what I've seen. I trust him a little bit more. He actually was making quarterback reads and taking care of the ball like he was supposed to.
Agreed.
But who has a breakout game? I'm going to go with somebody that, you've been seeing a lot of. And I think this is the week it's really going to hit, and it's going to hit hard. Tommy Hill.
Nice.
So lots of people across the country talking about a two-way player in Colorado with Travis Hunter, and we have one. Like, I thought maybe they were just throwing him in the Minnesota game because we weren't getting any. No, he's been in there, and they have packages for him to fly because the dude is fast. As long as we can get him the ball, he's going to outrun some dudes. And a lot of people forget that it was basically him and Trey Palmer last year.
Yep.
And they were like, who's faster? Like, some days it's Trey, some days it's Tommy. So yeah, we have that speed, and I just look at it and I'm like, maybe this is the week.
Interesting thought. Yeah, because let's say he gets a pick six or some crazy play on defense, and then catches an insane deep bomb for a touchdown, something like that. There'll be videos talking about it. Because like that's notable if you do, especially in skill position areas. Like there's one thing where it's a little bit like a novelty, like with Ndamukong Suh. Like, and don't get me wrong, he's a great player, but they put him in that lead block role because it was like, we're putting Suh in and y'all are gonna have to deal with it, and like it's funny to watch him run over y'all.
We want to be on ESPN. That's why we did that.
Right. But when you have somebody in these skill position roles doing defensive back and wide receiver, that's just really impressive because it's like mirrored skill sets is really what it is. Because I mean, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on wide receiver and expert on defensive back, but essentially as defensive back, you're playing in reverse. I mean, you're trying to find, you're backpedaling, you're reading, you're trying to do all that. Whereas as a wide receiver, you're playing full speed, finding your route, getting your choice of route, trying to read whether you're in zone or man so that you can settle in the right place. So it's very different positions. Very. And somebody who's athletic enough to play both in Division I, FBS, college football at the Power 5 level, that's notable no matter what.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And something I saw and have been seeing, especially on his defensive play, he's been in good position a lot. He's been there. He hasn't been getting his head around.
Yeah.
Basically on anything. That's the criticism, right?
Yeah.
So you really think that he didn't go into film, especially this past game? He probably could have had 2 picks. Easy. If he just turned his head.
Right.
We'll see. I'm hoping so, because we kind of need that person outside of the quarterback and outside of a technical skill position. We need that person that draws a little attention.
Yeah.
Because you have somebody that draws attention, it opens everything else up.
A weapon, a star.
A star.
You look at our team, like we really don't have that any stars, really. Like you look at our team, no. They play as a team. Especially last week, they played complementary football defensively. But you look at defensively, we're a great defense up to this point. But there's not like one guy that you're like, oh, there's like 25 different guys that you could point out and be like, I've seen great plays out of this guy or that guy. Yeah. But I was actually listening to Nick Baugh and Bo Rude talk about Tommy Hill the other day, and they said something funny. They were like, it must be like Tommy Hill has something on the coaches or something, and he's holding it over their head, and he's just like, I need to get into 1 or 2 offensive plays every single game, or else I'm going to release this and the world's going to see it.
Almost. Yeah.
But no, it's not that. It's really that he's just that fast. And I don't think they have somebody that fast who's a veteran player really at this point. In that wide receiver position. So finding a way to get him involved would be great, because at the end of the day, even though it's almost as if Malachi Coleman and Jalen Lloyd have been activated, at the end of the day, you'd really like to keep those dudes red shirts if you can, if it is at all possible. I don't think it will happen. I think they're going to play probably. But if you can find a way to have very efficient offensive possessions, and then you look back at the end of the day and you're like, dang, okay, Malachi did only play in 4 games this last year. Okay, we can keep him on the redshirt list or whatever. So those are things that always crosses a coach's mind when it comes to roster management and stuff. So that could also be a reason why they're doing that.
Well, yeah, we'll see. But you also have to think, like, if Malachi has a breakout year, not just this year, is he really going to be here for 4 years?
No,
not.
Yeah, I mean, he's the type of guy once he develops, if he hits that level, it's like, man, he's got all the tangibles to be that NFL draft pick if he really develops into a weapon. So he's another one you could pick for like who has a breakout game. Any of those freshman speedsters that we're going to end up using at any one given moment, you could have that flash, and if they have that flash, they could be like, "Ooh, go back to that." And
sure.
So it happens. Sure. At the end of the day, I feel like being a college football coach, especially for game time, is just a really, really, really complicated game of Madden. You know what I mean? Like, there's a whole lot more to manage, but at the end of the day, like, what works in Madden, like play wise, like if you ride with the hot hand, like all this stuff, football is football. So like, I remember a middle school coach at Fort Bend talked about that. He was like, middle school coaching is the best because it's not that complex and you're trying to get everybody into the game with substitutions. But at the end of the day, especially as an offensive coordinator, you just feel like you're playing Madden. Like,
yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into a little bit of some stats. Just want to throw some little things here. Let me get this going. Louisiana Tech.
Yeah.
Nebraska. Here we go. I'm just going to show this. All right. And this is just, ESPN. So you look at total yards, and these are averages, right? So you go to total yards on offense, 406 to our 339. Honestly, with how bad our offense has been, that's not too bad. You look at passing, that makes sense, over 200 yards. So they're not averaging over 200 yards rushing a game. And from everything that I've seen, that's not their strength. They try to throw the ball, as it can be referenced by. That's how many passing yards their starting quarterback has already. 5 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. A lot better than another ratio I won't mention.
Look at that, right? They just list Sims, right? Like they're just a sim and just like us.
Well, he has the more of the stats. I've realized that
true,
ESPN does it automatically. See, Gabe Irvin is still in there. He's not going to play.
No, I would
so,
say he's not.
But you look at here, and we're going to dive in a little bit more into these numbers. But this is what is the interesting part. They have given up around 200 rush yards a game, and that is about what we are averaging. So, if trends continue, we're going to have another good game on the ground. They're not allowing as many pass yards, but we're also not getting as many pass yards. We're not a pass-heavy team. But you look at our defense, and our pass yards, this is a little bit skewed since the last quarter and a half of Colorado. I just know it is.
Totally.
But still, that's the type of team this team wants to be. So you look at that. This is where we get into some really juicy stuff because I hate getting beat on the ground. You throw the ball around, it's harder to pass the ball and it's harder to execute. If that's how you want to make your way, that's how you want to make your way. But going to, I'm going to pull up another.
I agree with you about hate getting beat and running the ball. Think about all the Husker blowouts that you remember the most. At least for me, it's the Wisconsin ones. It's the ones where they ran for 500 yards against us. Because running for that type of yardage is so crazy. Passing for it is one thing. Running for it is an entirely different thing.
Because you would think the fortitude to have a good run defense, it's so easy. You only have to line up and beat their line.
Yep.
Collapse the hole, and that's it. So it's like one of the more simple things. And there's so many other things you can do through the air that other offenses can earn that. Even if you're playing good defense, they can earn it.
Aiden O'Connell, Purdue last year, some of those throws he was making.
Right.
I mean, the rush, it's funny though, but if you're getting beat rushing, it's really like demoralizing because you have to be getting beat physically if they're beating you rushing the football, basically. Either you're not tackling or you're getting beat at the line of scrimmage. One of those two things. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So one thing I did want to highlight before I go into the overall defense, as of right now, we have the number 2 ranked run defense in the nation, and Kansas State right there too, which I thought was interesting because I watched that 61-yard field goal, but apart from that, so pretty interesting. And if at the beginning of the season, we
don't play Air Force, huh?
Oh yeah, that's crazy. You look at that, and at the beginning of the season, if you were to tell us through 3 weeks, you have the number 2 ranked run defense in the entire country.
Great point.
You would think we would be undefeated.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
You
I wouldn't
would.
have believed you because that was our biggest question mark about the defense going into the year. Was like, man, I think I think our defensive backs are good, but can that 3-3-5 hold up against rushing attacks? Can that 3-3-5 hold up against the Big Ten? And to be fair, we're 3 games into the season. The old coach is saying is that you don't really know what a team is statistically until about 8 weeks into the year. Once you hit about week 8, generally the statistics will tell you the story. But before then, you just don't know because teams are getting their stuff figured out. But yeah, we haven't played a Big Ten opponent yet. But I saw this other one that was posted by College Football something Twitter account today. That was yards per rush or yards per play. I think it was even just yards per play. We were number 10. If you wanted to pull that up, you could. But we were number 10 yards per play. And we were the only one in the top 10 that had played 2 Power 5 opponents. Besides Rutgers had actually played 2. Besides Rutgers had actually played 2 Power 5 opponents, and they were actually 1 spot ahead of us, surprisingly. So Rutgers plays Michigan this week, and that's an interesting game as well. But anyway, so yeah, our defense has. I don't want to say I'm completely surprised about this because I think everyone's tune started to get to the point, especially about midway through fall camp, where we all listened to the coaches and we were like, okay, it feels like the defense is going to be the strength of this team. Yeah. And that's completely played out. Like it's much understatement by the coaches because not only is it the strength of this team, but like, man, our offense it's like you're watching 2 completely different teams, playing in 2 completely different universes. When even last game, it's like you're watching that whenever you're watching our defense and our offense play. So
yeah. But I just wanted to quickly point out because we kind of showed the high-level averages on the last page. But you look at here, and Louisiana Tech is only they're 121 ranked run defense in entire Power 5, and not Power 5, you know what I meant. And they're giving up around 4.86 yards a rush, so not great. Definitely towards the bottom. Yes. This is interesting too, right above them. Illinois, basically the same thing. They're giving up 4.86 yards rush too. So something to keep our eye on there as the season goes on. But let's go to overall defense here because this will give us a little bit more of a
it's at the
idea.
Bottom.
Yeah.
Total defense.
So total defense. For one, I just got to give props to Air Force. I know that they've had a couple good games in a row, but like, look at that.
Yeah.
Like, there's number 1 in the entire nation, and then followed by the people that you expect: Michigan, Ohio State.
Right. Michigan playing Texas 5A high school teams. They're not even playing the 6A teams. They're playing the high school 5A teams.
But still, dude, they're good.
Yeah. Three interceptions against Bowling Green. Yeah, they're good.
Yeah. So Nebraska, through 3 weeks, 29. So we have a top 30 defense with pass and run all in one. So we're giving up, it looks like, around 4.19 yards a play. Again, that's with pass and run. Yards per game, we're giving up just under 285. Yeah. So 2.84.7. For the much lauded Hawkeyes, we are ranked higher than them at this point in the season.
Yeah.
So
look, that's significant. I mean,
yes,
just looking at it from a big picture perspective, looking at those numbers, that is significant improvement from last year. If y'all remember last year, 3 games into the season, our statistics were screwed. Even if we played like the 85 Bears for the rest of the year, it wouldn't matter. That Georgia Southern game and the Oklahoma game a week later gave us they 649 yards of total offense, 749, something like an insane number. That when you see that number over there on the yards per game category, 93 is talking 382 yards per game. So if you have a 650 game where you give up 650, you're screwed. You're failing the class. You're failing the class. So, like, doesn't matter. But so that, if anybody wants to say that, oh, this is just the same as the as the Frost era. It's not. Okay, it's not. This is year one of Rule, and Frost took 3 or 4 years to get his defense playing efficiently. And we're here now. So that's really encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. So Louisiana Tech, a little bit better in total defense, not by a lot, but they're number 91 right now. They're giving up just over 381 yards per game. And again, remember their run defense was pretty bad. So now I'll stop sharing this. So now that we've kind of seen the breakdowns on defense, and I didn't even want to look at offense because, I think this is gonna just in general, our defense are gonna win us games, and if our offense's strengths, if we're gonna be able to run the ball, they'll be fine.
Yes,
they'll be fine.
absolutely.
If we're forced to throw it, that's where it gets a little iffy.
Yeah.
So you just look at that, and I think that we're in another prime spot for another low stress game in Lincoln.
Yes, I agree with that. I think I said something leading up to the Iowa game last year because Iowa's offense was so bad that I was like, defense, you're great. Offense, all we need from you is to make 3 plays, 3 plays the entire game. That's all we need from you. And that's sort of going to be the story of a lot of these Big Ten games this year, but I think it's the story of this game because Louisiana Tech is, a passing-oriented, high-tempo offense. The last guy I remember hearing about was their running back or wide receiver. They use him in a lot of different places, Smoke Robinson. But anyway, so they're high tempo, but we've already played high tempo this year, and we did well against it. It was the turnovers that really screwed us in that game. So I think our defense is going to handle them. I think our defense is going to handle them fine. And all we need to win, all we need our offense to do is to hold the ball for a decent amount of time. Don't just give it away to the other team and have a couple good plays here and there.
Yep. Yeah.
That's all we need to do to win. But if our offense comes to play and they have a couple of breakout moments and some starting to establish their identity and things like that, then it'll be a classic, preseason game feeling of a romping.
And listen, they got a win under their belt now. After coming back home after 2 really tough road games, that win is going to build into confidence because the team has, as we've been saying, has talent all over the place. Yeah. All they need is that confidence and that momentum. And I think the last week's win is just going to keep building. Louisiana Tech has won 2 games. They've played 4 games already. But, I just think that this is another really great opportunity for our offense to get a little bit more confidence.
Yep.
And for our defense to tune some things up, get a couple turnovers, and really make it a fun day.
It's important. It's important because your first conference game, your first one was Minnesota, obviously, so you already have a loss on the board basically to start out, and your first conference game now is Michigan. So unfortunately, because of if you look at it overall, like we talked about this, if you look at our schedule overall it's not the craziest schedule in the world, but you look at those first 4 or 5 weeks, it's like, oh man, they go on the road, Big Ten first game of the year, and then Colorado, and now Michigan as your first traditional home Big Ten game, Big Ten opener sort of feel. And so by all accounts, everybody on Big Noon, it's not going to be the Big Noon game, but everybody on those types of shows, when our game comes up for them to pick the game, they're going to pick Michigan. I can almost guarantee you they're going to pick Michigan, especially depending on how the Michigan-Rutgers game goes this weekend. We'll see. But
Rutgers does not look like a pushover this year.
No, they don't. Like we've talked about, their yards per play is ranked number 9th on defense in the country. They're at 1.6 yards.
Their run just for their run defense on that little sheet that we were looking at, they're 11.
Yeah, no, yeah, so they're legit. They're legit. So we'll see how Michigan deals with them. But I'm saying all this to say that this Louisiana Tech game is very important for us to have our mojo going into next week, because I think Michigan is still going to be big and strong and fast and well coached, as they sort of have been under Harbaugh these last couple of years. I think they're still going to largely be that team. But I think they're more beatable this year than they were last year. I think they are, based on what they've shown in the first couple of games. Now, again, we'll see what they look like against Rutgers. But I think that if Nebraska is firing on full steam, we found an offensive identity, our defense will show up to play. Okay, our defense will show up to play, and if our offense takes care of the ball, and then we'll have a chance in that game. But this game needs to come first, and that's why I'm not the coach. Because if I was giving this speech to the team, they'd all be sitting there thinking about Michigan.
Also, yeah. So let's reel you back in here.
Yeah.
Let's reel you back in.
Louisiana Tech.
Louisiana Tech.
Yeah.
What's your final score prediction?
Final score prediction: Louisiana Tech. Like I said, important game. Hope they show up. I'm excited. I think it's going to be a 45-3 affair.
45-3.
I think it's going to be one of the biggest ass kickings we've had in a while. I think our defense will just shut them down entirely until garbage time, when even our seconds will hold them to a field goal. So, yeah, that is my prediction.
So I think we'll get into the 40s too. But I think it's 49-14.
Wow, we are optimistic, man. Most people are predicting, like, I don't know, 31-17, 31-21.
We were both. I don't remember what your score prediction was last week, but I was really close to mine.
I don't remember what it was on this show, but I did a super chat one for a different show that was 49-3. So
mine was 42-7. So I was so close.
Yeah,
literally just a couple shifts of the score.
We didn't score as much as I thought we would, but our defense played about how I thought they would. So,
yeah.
So
Awesome.
We'll see. What time's the game? 2:30 on Saturday, right?
2:30 your time, 3:30 mine. Yep.
2:30
We'll see.
Yeah.
That's going to be
God's
it for
time.
today.
2:30 God's time.
2:30. Okay. That's going to be it for us today on the Cornhusker Corner. Remember that you can always catch us the full show either on YouTube. You just have to do a little digging in the live section, or you can listen to the full audio if you're on the go, anywhere that you get podcasts. Follow us on X or Twitter at @CHusker_corner, and on Instagram, Cornhusker Corner. Any final thoughts before we?
Yeah, when you go over to the YouTube channel, if you subscribe, thank you. I'm still getting notifications for each and every subscriber, so I appreciate it. Also, if you go over there to subscribe, click the bell so that you can get notified of whenever we're going live or whenever we post. And yeah, so our YouTube channel is organized where we're going to have videos and clips from the show over in the video section. And if you go over to the live section, you'll be able to find the library of all of our episodes. So go check it out. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, that's going to be it for today on the Cornhusker Corner. Always remember that there's no place like
this podcast.